Hello everyone, welcome back to the Victory Road February Season 12 Challenge, sponsored of course by GG Tour. My name is Ben Kiraku, joined here by Jamie Boyd. We have seen already a top 16 match for this tournament, and now we are going of course into the very much anticipated top 8 match here today. Victor Medina will be in the top 8, but will be a different in a different part of the bracket. We're going to focus on another couple of players here, Aditya Subramanian and Jude Lee from Singapore.
Yeah, so we're going to be getting another Palkia on the stream. Aditya is going to be rocking that Palkia that they did bring to the previous tournament, and it is going to be facing down a Colossal as well. We haven't seen Colossal pop up too much in Series 12. It was very common in the non-restricted formats, and occasionally when you were allowed one restricted as well, but now you're allowed two. We've got that Zacian and Yveltal paired up with it, so we are going to be seeing it from Aditya's side of the field. They are going to be running that Zacian, Incineroar, Palkia, Amoonguss, Thundurus, and Ditto against that Colossal team coming out from Jude with that Urshifu, Zacian, Incineroar, Rillaboom, and Yveltal.
Yeah, the Colossal does make a matchup a little bit more interesting. And of course, you have got that activation of the weakness policy. You've got that speed boost that the Colossal can go for. And Zacian, a Pokemon that does so much damage in VGC, it's always nice to have a Pokemon that really does damage to Zacian and can outspeed it as well. And that's certainly what Colossal will be doing. But yeah, we'll have to see if it comes to the match at all. If Aditya does decide to bring it, and of course Jude bringing up his own Ditto as well to the match, which I'm really looking forward to seeing if that is going to be coming to the game. We are seeing the game from Aditya's side of the field, and he's going to be leading with that Incineroar, Amoonguss, and of course Jude leading with that Yveltal paired with the Zacian.
You don't often see both restricteds paired off immediately as the lead, but you do often see this Amoonguss and Incineroar pairing. You get to go for that very passive Fake Out and Spore, then you can Parting Shot out. So Aditya playing a lot slower here against the two Pokemon, but Zacian and Yveltal are in pretty reasonable positions. The Yveltal, if it is going to be Dynamaxing, it could just go on the offensive at this point. Deal some very good damage to that opposing Amoonguss, and a combination of Oblivion Wing slash Max Airstream would KO that Amoonguss in the combination with the Behemoth Blade as well. So Aditya does need to be careful here, and is going for the much more standard approach of just go for Fake Out like we are seeing into the opposing Zacian. Most likely going for a Sport into something as well, but the Oblivion Wing's just going to hit that Cobra Berry at the Amoonguss. They're not going to be doing too much damage, and it looks like something will be going to sleep here from the Spore that should be coming out from this Amoonguss. You can see there the Cobra Berry very effective at reducing the damage from the Yveltal, not doing too much damage at all, and Spore is fired off into that Yveltal. Makes sense in case the Zacian would is going for the Protect, so you know that the Assault Vest is on that Yveltal. That is a guaranteed Spore into that slot.
It certainly is, and yeah, interesting that the Zacian didn't go for a Protect there, just wanting to maybe try to get some damage off, maybe thinking that the Fake Out would be going into the Yveltal to stop any sort of flying moves going into that Amoonguss. But of course, with that Cobra Berry, doesn't have to worry too much about the flying type damage. More important to protect it from the Behemoth Blade, and now we see the Zacian just going for the Protect here, saving itself from either a Parting Shot or a Flare Blitz. Coming out from that Incineroar, Flare Blitz being the move of choice for Aditya, and a Spore coming out into that slot to cover it as well. So definitely a lot of pressure going into that slot, but that Yveltal has managed to take another turn of its sleep and could be in a position where it wakes up fairly soon. And unfortunately, you know,
the Zacian did carry substitute because we know with the open team sheets. So the Flare Blitz covering that pretty nicely. The Flare Blitz would have broken any substitutes that would have been fired off, and then the Spore would have been able to hit that Zacian. So the Palkia is going to be joining the field for the Amoonguss now, going to be getting that Regenerator going, recovering back pretty much back to full after that Oblivion Wing, and Behemoth Blade is going to be launched off by the opposing Zacian into that Palkia. It's going to do a reasonable amount of damage. That's over half damage to the opposing Palkia thanks to that critical hit. So getting past that Intimidate that was put onto the opposing Zacian from the Incineroar. Still asleep for the Yveltal, but Incineroar is going to be going for that Parting Shot into that Zacian, reducing the damage output even more and getting that pivot action going.
Yeah, now in a combination with the Intimidate and the Parting Shot, that Zacian is going to be at -1 stages of decreased attack stat, and that's going to be really difficult for Jude to do the sort of damage that you want to be doing with the Zacian, especially with the Amoonguss coming back in here. The Zacian's not likely to be able to target down that Palkia, even though it probably would still be in range of a play rough in this position. That Amoonguss is sitting much prettier in front of these two Pokemon. Unfortunately for Jude, for Aditya, the Palkia has to really do some damage this turn, and there's a lot of things that Jude can do, switching out his Pokemon to allow him to reposition and bring that Zacian in a little bit later in a good HP range. Of course, the Yveltal has taken a couple of ticks of sleep now, so could be waking up any time soon and could be going for a max airstream. Certainly, definitely a risk to the Amoonguss, and of course, it has eaten its Cobra Berry already, so a lot of threats on the field, but we'll have to see how this Dynamax Palkia manages to cope and whether it can launch an attack into that Zacian, because there wasn't a switch out.
Yeah, no switch outs at all. And the Yveltal may be going for its Dynamax. It might just be going for some Snarls as well to be able to reduce the damage output from the Palkia. But it is going for the Dynamax here. So the Palkia does outspeed this Yveltal. But the Yveltal going to be taking a few turns off from the sleeps. But now it does want to go on the offensive with those Dynamax moves that could be coming out as well. So we'll have to see if the Yveltal is going to be waking up this turn so that it can get off those max moves. That's one of the worst things that can happen if you go for the Dynamax and then you just don't get to make use of it. But Heathen Blade is going to be launched off into that opposing Amoonguss here, so it's going to be doing some pretty reasonable damage to the Amoonguss. It is sitting at -1 at this point because of the Intimidate and the Parting Shot. It's not doing too much damage, but Palkia is able to respond with a Max Quake into the opposing Zacian. No substitute was set up and is doing a huge amount of damage. It is able to pick up the knockout on that opposing Zacian thanks to that Life Orb boost from the Palkia. The fact that it didn't get Snarl at all from the Yveltal, had opportunities to be able to go for Snarls if it wasn't asleep, but didn't wake up to be able to go for that. And so, yeah, it's going to have to see if the Yveltal is going to be waking up here. It is able to wake up, so it is able to get off that max airstream. And the Code Berry is no longer on the Amoonguss. It is able to just go and pick up that knockout in combination with that Behemoth Blade. And now that's probably going to put the Yveltal faster than the opposing Palkia as well.
It is, and we saw the Palkia go before the Yveltal, so clearly quite a speedy Palkia, as the Yveltal does naturally, or would naturally outspeed the Palkia if they were both trained to be as fast as they possibly could. And so now you've got a bit of a decision to make. The Amoonguss was holding back the full force of that Palkia, the Yveltal on Jude's side of the field. You've got the Zacian, which has been knocked out, but now that it has been knocked out, you've got that Urshifu that coming in for Jude that's going to be putting a lot of pressure on. And Intimidate is only going to do so much work against an offensive force that strong.
Yeah, you just get to crit through the Intimidates as well, but at least you get to go for the Fake Out into it. The Palkia, after the going for the Max Quake, it should be able to take on the Yveltal a lot better, and the Incineroar didn't have that luxury, unfortunately, and now the Yveltal could just go for the Airstream to be able to put the Urshifu definitely faster than the opposing Palkia as well, because we don't know the speed interactions yet. Palkia does naturally outspeed the Urshifu, so maybe an Airstream is necessary to be able to put that faster, but then at the same time, you could just be going for that Fake Out and the Max Wormwind to be able to knock out that Urshifu. With that combination of attacks. So we knew that it's carrying the Focus Sash, as a lot of Urshifus do tend to do on Colossal teams. So maybe you do want to be protecting and just get that Airstream so you guarantee that you're faster. And it is going to be going for that Protect here, just going to be keeping itself safe.
Yeah, nice Protect there, just making sure that no damage comes onto it, maybe preserving that Focus Sash if there's no attacks coming out onto it from the Palkia, which would naturally break through the Protect with the Dynamax moves. Max Airstream coming out from the Yveltal onto Incineroar and does quite a lot of damage, but a Wax Wormwind following up from the Palkia, not going into the Yveltal, but instead going into that Urshifu, and is going to break that Focus Sash that you mentioned earlier, Jamie, and drop the attack of the both the Urshifu and the Yveltal. Probably not going to do too much, but that Parting Shot is going to play a little bit of a role with the Incineroar being able to switch out, reposition, get that Fake Out back in play, but also to stop the Yveltal being able to do so much damage with the Max Airstream. And especially with the combination of moves that has come out already, could mean that the Palkia would need to be doubled up to survive, to to be knocked out by Jude's Pokemon, given that the Surging Strikes wouldn't be able to knock out the Palkia and take advantage of those critical hits.
Yeah, you'd have to be going for those close combats, and you've been intimidated, you've been parting shotted on the Yveltal as well, so you're really not doing too much damage unless you do go for the Surging Strikes. The Zacian switching in is definitely a Pokemon that doesn't want to be taking any of those Surging Strikes. Two of them usually ends up knocking out the opposing Zacian, and now you've got the Airstream on the Urshifu as well. That should be outspeeding the Zacian, so you could go for some guaranteed damage into the Zacian or the Incineroar that could switch in with the Surging Strikes, or you could try and get the knockout onto that opposing Palkia with the combination of the Max Airstream or Darkness coming out from the Yveltal with the close combats, but because the Intimidate may not be able to pick up that knockout, so Jude's got to decide here what they prioritize, whether they think they can knock out the Palkia, because if you double up into the Palkia and don't get the knockout, then that's just completely opened up the Zacian on Aditya's side of the field to do some massive damage.
It is, and massive damage is where Jude wants to be. Max Darkness going into that Zacian. It looks like a little bit of a double up going on here, capitalizing off the Max Airstream boosts that were previously in play, and getting that special defense drop, which may not matter so much on the surface, but does stop that Max Quake from being as important as it was before. We see the first of 3 Surging Strikes going into that Zacian, and not quite enough to pick up the KO in combination. It looks like Aditya is going to be able to attack with both of his Pokemon, starting off with a Behemoth Blade from this Zacian, likely going into the Yveltal, and because of the increased damage that Behemoth Blade does to max targets, is going to be doing a significant chunk of damage. Max Quake's coming out from that Palkia, going to be enough to knock out the Urshifu quite cleanly overall. Does stop any setup from the Colossal as well, which is a nice bonus for Aditya if the Colossal is sitting in the back, and of course does raise the special defense stats back to where they were before they were knocked down by the Max Darkness coming out from Jude's Yveltal.
Yeah, so with the parting shots earlier, it may be able to survive any attacks that the Yveltal would want to go for. Incineroar is going to join the field to get the Intimidate onto the opposing Zacian, and with the Dynamaxes going to be used up here, it could be going for a fake out into either Pokemon, but this is still a very strong position for Aditya. Even though the Yveltal's got the Airstream boost, it's going to be faster than the opposing Zacian and the Palkia, but down to the last 2 Pokemon at this point means you just get to go for one more fake out, and maybe the Palkia could take up the knockout onto the opposing Yveltal with a Spatial Rend. The Zacian would definitely still be able to pick up the knockout with a Behemoth Blade, and Aditya still has a Pokemon waiting in the back that they can switch in as well. So still a pretty awkward position for Jude. Both Pokemon are in range of being knocked out from either Pokemon. You've got the Incineroar that can just come in at any time for Aditya's side of the field to get that Intimidate onto the opposing Incineroar, get your own fake out pressure going, and Aditya also has the luxury if the Incineroar switches in to switch it back out once again to go for the recycling of the fake outs, and Jude is down to their last 2 Pokemon, so that can no longer be an option for them.
And Aditya, not even close to beating back to his last 2 Pokemon, does manage to switch his Palkia out into the Incineroar. Gets an Intimidate off against Incineroar on Jude's side of the field, which is definitely very useful, and Zacian just protecting to waste out that fake out potential from Jude's side of the field, and that fake out doesn't land, in fact, into the Protect, but does into the Incineroar on Aditya's side of the field. So not a lot happened too much, just a little bit of a fake out chip here, but that fake out coming out from Aditya is going to make this next turn a lot more safe.
Yeah, you know the Assault Vest is on the Yveltal. You just get to go for a very safe fake out into the Yveltal and Behemoth Blade, and that is a knockout into that slot. It would allow the Incineroar on Jude's side of the field to be able to pick up the knockout with the Flare Blitz, but then you've got Palkia and Incineroar against the opposing Incineroar, and Palkia will usually end up on the winning side of that. So yeah, we're just seeing the fake out into the Yveltal, and probably going to be seeing a follow-up into the Yveltal with the Behemoth Blade here just to pick up the knockout. You've got a guaranteed KO, and you should be able to win against the Incineroar with your Palkia waiting in the back. So yeah, the Yveltal is just going down to this Behemoth Blade. So we'll see if the Incineroar is just going to be knocking out the opposing Zacian with the Flare Blitz, and it's not going to, even if it is able to pick up the knockout and dodge every single Hydro Pump that could be coming out from the Palkia, he's still got to break through the opposing Incineroar as well, which is something that opposing Incineroars don't tend to want to do.
No, definitely not. And Deitch is in a position where he doesn't even need to risk the going for that Hydro Pump miss. He can always just fall back on the Earth Power. That's definitely going to be strong enough to do some significant damage, if not knock it out, knock Incineroar out on Jude's side of the field. It does carry, I believe, that Shurker Berry. So the first one, not going to be doing so much damage, but Palkia can only be hit by a Flare Blitz, and it does 4 times resist that Flare Blitz. So, not really any reason for Aditya to go for any moves that can miss. Just probably quite content to just hit buttons that do damage until the Incineroar on a Jude side of the field is no more.
Yeah, and in this position, when you're in this strong a position, you want to be going for as many accurate moves as you can. Earth Power is 100% accurate. It will always hit. Even though it was a Shocker Berry that allowed that Incineroar to live, like you said, you can just go for the 100% accurate moves. If you go for Hydro Pump, you open yourself up to a Flare Blitz, just being able to slowly chip away at you. If it got a burn, that could be something as well. But yeah, the Earth Power was able to do half damage to that opposing Incineroar. The opposing Incineroar didn't get the Flare Blitz knockout on the Palkia. That means that Earth Power is just going to follow up once again to be able to pick up the knockout on to Jude's Incineroar and take the first game for Aditya.
Absolutely, and that's a really quite a commanding lead position or end game position there, and no benefit like the last round that we commentated that was a opportunity to protect, to get a little bit more thinking time. Aditya just able to pick up the clean knockout there with Earth Power and take game 1. So speaking about the matchup, Jamie, there was a fairly close game sort of in the mid game, and then a combination of that parting shot and the bulk on the Palkia and Zacian really coming in clutch there for Aditya. How would you, if you were Jude, adjust to game 2?
Only your Dynamax Pokemon that you'd want to be going for is that Colossal, and into a opposing Palkia, it's really not the greatest option. And Yveltal was the Pokemon that was chosen to go for the Dynamax, but it's a Pokemon that can really put a stop to opposing Palkias because the Assault Vest it can take on very well. If you don't Dynamax it, you can go for the Snarls as well to really reduce the damage outputs. But because you're not bringing your Colossals this matchup, you don't have the best ways of dealing with the opposing Zacian, so you do need to be wary of that as well.
Yeah, it's kind of, as you were talking there, I was kind of looking a little bit at the team that Jude has brought and wondering maybe if there's an argument for the Dynamax on the Incineroar coming out as well. Could be quite an interesting way to break through that Zacian if there's an opportunity to, and maybe just use the combination of the Yveltal Snarling to stop all of the damage coming out from the Palkia on Aditya's side of the field, and of course would be able to be supported by that Urshifu as well. Close combats being able to knock out the Palkia, and could be quite an interesting scenario, but we'll have to see how they adjust. It does look like the two players are just reconnecting at the moment, so apologies for the short delay here, but we will be getting into the match fairly soon. In the meantime, can we talk a little bit about that Ditto, because that didn't come to the match by the looks of things, but if Aditya decides to bring it to the game, it could be pretty significant, and in a game 2 situation could be worth the risk. What do you think?
Yeah, Ditto is always nice in these restricted formats where you're allowed 2 Pokemon, because then you effectively could get a third one as well. On
yeah.
It's a little bit awkward going into, a lot of the times you want to be copying a Pokemon that has got some boosts so that you can steal those boosts, get the Choice Scarf going, outspeed, and use those boosts against your opposing Pokemon. If you are copying a boosted Colossal, then if you want to be going for the Dynamax to be able to not have to do the charge turn of the Meteor Beam, which we'd assume would come out to hit the opposing Colossal, that gets rid of your Choice Scarf, and then you Speed tie again. So it would be a very awkward bring against the opposing Colossal. If you're getting the copy of the opposing Yveltal, that would be pretty decent, and against the opposing Zacian, that would be very strong as well, because of course, that interaction with when you're copying the opposing Zacians, the Ditto transforms, steals the +1 that it already has, and then the Intrepid Sword happens once again to get it to +2, and then that puts it strong enough to be able to knock out opposing Zacians in one shot. So Ditto could definitely still justifiably come to the match, because stealing any restricted will always be worthwhile. If you steal the Zacian, it's going to be super strong. If you steal the Yveltal, you can just go for the Snarls to put the damage reduction onto the opposing Yveltal as well.
And of course, if you maybe steal an Incineroar, you get the odd turn of Fake Out here and there, and put a little bit of pressure on, maybe get some Intimidate on the field. So that's always quite a fun one when I quite enjoy doing when I play Ditto on the odd occasion. But yeah, it should be an interesting bring if if Aditya decides to bring it to the match. But we are now in team preview. Same teams again. We have Aditya with Zacian, Incineroar, Palkia, Amoonguss, Thunderous, and Ditto, of course, and Colossal, Urshifu, Zacian, Incineroar, Rillaboom, and Yveltal coming out for Jude.
Yeah, so saw a very passive start for Aditya with the Incineroar and the Amoonguss, and there wasn't really too much that could stop that coming out for Jude's side of the field. With the Yveltal and Zacian lead, that meant that the Yveltal was effectively guaranteed to be put to sleep that turn because of that Cobra Berry from the Amoonguss. So if Aditya wants to be going for that again, then Jude needs to find a way around that, whether they're just accepting that their Pokemon are going to sleep and just hope that you wake up eventually. The substitute on the Zacian would be a very good way of mitigating that. If you go with your own Fake Out into the opposing Incineroar, then you could get your substitute up completely for free against the opposing Amoonguss. So there could be a reasoning to bring either the Incineroar or the Rillaboom as the leads paired up with the Zacian, because the Zacian is what you want to be facing down the opposing Palkia as well. If you get intimidated by the Incineroar on the Aditya side of the field, that's still going to be putting a damage reduction on your Zacian, so not making the most use of the substitute that could be coming out, but that would be a way of bypassing the Amoonguss if you just get that substitute up, because you saw that the Amoonguss and the Incineroar had to go for a Flare Blitz and a Spore, committing both attacks into that slot to try and put it to sleep, and then just protected on that turn and stalled out a turn at sleep. So you do need to be aware of that, and if the substitute goes up for the Zacian on Jude's side of the field, that could put them in a lot stronger position.
It certainly could, and I did see a little sneak preview. We do have that Ditto in the back, which I'm really excited to see. What we also have on the field is that Colossal, so also very interesting. You mentioned earlier about copying boosts, and it looks like Colossal could have the opportunity to get some boost on the field a little bit later in the game. I don't think it's going to be this turn though, with the Amoonguss being able to Rage Powder away any boosts, and of course that Palkia, being a water type Pokemon, is going to be able to knock out that Colossal in one. And there's not many Pokemon on Aditya's side of the field that really want to be switching into a Max Geyser. In fact, unfortunately for Jude, one of them is next to the Colossal at the moment, with that Urshifu being the only other thing than a Rillaboom that does resist it. So yeah, really strong start there for Aditya. Would be surprised if we saw anything but a Rage Powder coming out from this Amoonguss, but maybe we'll see Aditya go for a little bit of style points here and try to spore the Urshifu slot.
And you could go for that Spore because, of course, there's the mind games of course, the Amoonguss is going to go for the Rage Powder, so if you go for the Aqua Jet, then it's completely useless. But then you could just go for another layer on top of that and just predict the Amoonguss will be going for the Spore and get your Aqua Jet going. So both players are going to be Dynamaxing here. The Palkia is going to be the Dynamax of choice for Aditya. Of course, you want to get that 100% accurate Max Geyser that would absolutely be able to KO this opposing Colossal that is going for the G-Max. So it's going to be very risky here in the face of the Palkia. It's going to be near impossible to get up the boosts on the Colossal if the Amoonguss goes for that Rage Powder, which would be very safe for Aditya's side of the field. That is what they are opting for, so not going for any of those Spores, just guaranteeing that their Aqua Jet would not hit into that opposing Amoonguss. And you can see there on that little pause of the Aqua Jet, it was initially fired off into the Colossal, but then was redirected into that Amoonguss. So Aditya making the safe play and getting it correct there. No Aqua Jets firing off into that Colossal, but here comes an activation of your Steam Engine. Here comes a lifelong Max Geyser from Palkia. That is definitely going to get you to +6 and also KO probably 6 Colossal on top of that. So the Colossal not getting activated there. Dynamax completely wasted for Jude, and Aditya is absolutely in the driving seat.
Yeah, you've got to respect the play though. I mean, going for that Aqua Jet and attack into Colossal would potentially be a fairly good position. If you get the Max Flare off onto the Amoonguss, you'll definitely knock it out. We have seen that it's Cobra Berry, of course, and not Focus Sash or anything else that would allow it to survive. And so maybe in the Sun and Dynamax, you'd have half a chance of surviving, but it's really quite unlikely. Probably Jude just wanting to trade the Amoonguss out for the Colossal there, and getting into a position where he can at least attack the Pokemon on Aditya's side of the field without redirection. As it stands, Zacian coming in and Amoonguss still being on the field means that Aditya is able to just launch attacks into the Zacian, because that Urshifu is not going to be doing any damage whatsoever to the Amoonguss on this turn at all.
At least you got the rain boost, because you do sacrifice your Colossal to get the rain going up as well. So that's going to be doing a reasonable amount of damage to the opposing. It's like that. That's some.
That's okay. That's okay. That's more than I expected. It's nearly half.
I was just about to say it puts it under half based on the previous damage, but not quite. Unfortunately. But Max Whirlwind is fired off into the opposing Urshifu, just ignoring the substitutes. But if you're putting the Zacian down to well, not -1, it is just reducing its attack by 1, putting it back to neutral at this point. You can somewhat ignore it at this point, just be able to get that damage reduction going. Now the Play Rough won't be able to knock out the Palkia in one shot. You'd probably have to commit both attacks into the opposing Palkia to be able to do that, but that's the point of the Amoonguss, to just keep going for the Rage Powder and keep it safe. So now you've got a very guaranteed Max Wormwood into that opposing Urshifu again. If it goes for a Protect, it's still going to be KO'd because it is down to 1 HP at this point. And no Pokemon waiting in the back wants to switch into a Wormwood either. The Zacian's already on the field, sat behind its substitute. So that slot does not want to take a Max Wormwood, and it would be a very safe play for Aditya to go for, because it would also reduce the damage even further of the Zacian. You need to switch out the Zacian if you want to get rid of that, but as soon as that Urshifu slot is KO'd, you can't do that anymore. So still a very, very strong position for Aditya.
And I like the tactic here, going for the Max Wormwind and just saying, hey, you know what, have a Zacian on the field. That's fine, but it's going to be reduced attack, and we're just going to keep going until the Zacian isn't able to really do the damage that it wants to be able to do at all. A Behemoth Blade going into the protected Amoonguss, so really nice play there from Aditya, and that Surging Strike launching out from Jude's side of the field as well before that Palkia. Going into the Amoonguss, covering the Protect in some way, I suppose, but those 3 hits have done not quite enough to knock out that Amoonguss. Obviously going through the Protect because of that Unseen Fist ability, and Max Wormwind now going to be finishing off that Urshifu and dropping the Zacian down to 1- stages of attack. And the trouble is, now that the Urshifu and the Colossal have gone down for Jude's side of the field, the Zacian is no longer able to switch out and reset those boosts, nor reset the Intrepid Sword ability and get an attack boost. So really nice position here for Aditya, just taking a commanding lead over the second game.
Yeah, and the Play Rough probably won't be able to pick up the knockout on the Palkia at this point. A really nice Protect, because you would assume that the Zacian would be going for that Behemoth Blade, because if it goes for that Play Rough into the Palkia and just hits a Rage Powder, you're probably still not picking up the knockout on the Amoonguss. But based on the Surging Strikes damage, you may have been able to, so you could have gone for that Play Rough into the Palkia on that previous turn potentially. But Aditya getting the better end of that play. You've still got the Amoonguss, you can still redirect one more attack away from the Palkia, keep it safe from any of those Play Roughs that could be coming out from the opposing Zacian, as it is going to be going on the offensive here. Play Rough does come out and is going to be hitting against that Amoonguss. Even with the reduced stages of attack, it's still able to pick up the knockout on that Amoonguss, but it has absolutely done its job at this point. Even though it wasn't going for any spores, just being able to keep that Palkia safe has been very, very nice for Aditya. It's able to go for a Spatial Rend into this Yveltal, do some very nice damage even with the Assault Vest on the Yveltal as well, and it just goes for a Snarl here, so that damage is going to be permanent, not going to be recovered by the Oblivion Wing that could have come out, and that means that the Zacian that could be switching in for Aditya's side of the field should be able to pick up the knockout on that Yveltal with the Behemoth Blade now.
Definitely will be able to, and yeah, that Snarl did a lot more damage than I expected, being single target, as well as boosted by the Dark Aura is a really nice amount of damage to be done, but unfortunately too little too late, I think. And yeah, okay, the Palkia is probably in range of a Play Rough, as you mentioned, but so is that Yveltal, and the Zacian on Aditya's side of the field unlikely to lose out against Jude's Zacian, as he targets down Aditya's, unless there's some critical hits going on here. I think that's probably the only way that we can see Jude coming back into the game, especially if the Zacian on Jude's side of the field is trained to be naturally faster than Aditya's Zacian is.
That would be a way back for Jude if that is the case, and the Zacian on Jude's side seems to be going first, going for that Behemoth Blade into the opposing Zacian, so it would be able to do a reasonable amount of damage, but would need a critical hit to be able to pick up the knockouts. You can see with the -1 that the Zacian is sitting at, only doing about a third of damage to the opposing Zacian, which is able to respond back with another Behemoth Blade. Thanks to that earlier Spatial Rend, the Yveltal has been put in range of this attack. It is going to be able to pick up the clean knockout here, and now it's a 3v1 against the opposing Zacian that has been reduced by its attack 2 stages. It's got the substitute up, which is something at least, but yeah, it's still looking very, very strong for Aditya.
And the trouble is now that the Palkia is protected, it's likely that the Palkia is going to be going for a damaging move, and so Jude has to either take the opportunity to knock out the Palkia and then try to win against the Ditto we know is in the back. Unfortunately, Jude does not know, but that would have been very difficult, even a neutral Zacian that would definitely be faster than Jude's Zacian, because we know that Choice Scarf is in play on the Ditto, means that it really is a difficult scenario to go up against. I think the only way that Jude would have a game plan at all is to knock out that Zacian with a critical hit, but that's only if Aditya lets it, and didn't get to that stage. Jude, knowing that he was probably not going to win the match, and decides to forfeit game 2. So a 2-0 clean sweep for Aditya in that match, and really well played to both players.
Yeah, so it's going to be Aditya advancing into the semi-final. So we are going to be cutting to a short break. We will be right back with the semi-finals coming up very shortly. And so it looks like we may even be able to feature both of the semi-finals. So we'll just cut to that short break and just clarify that. But just stay tuned and we'll be right back.